Sure. The district as a whole is doing so many things to meet the needs of our learners. The first thing is the Zoom systems that were purchased. They are absolutely phenomenal. I mean, there's no replacement for having all students in the classroom, but this is pretty close, and this is the best that can be done. So the Zoom systems are really nice because they give us a good picture in the class, but then also they let the teachers see the students because there's a big screen for us to look and see at the students who are at home. So it really helps us as teachers.
Well, to start with, we're showing up, and we're there for the kids in the classrooms. We've got, the kids all have masks. We have shields on the desks to give them sort of a more enclosed space. They're separated as far apart as they possibly can be in the classroom. We've pretty much removed all the other furniture in order to maximize the space in the rooms. We're getting the kids outside as much as possible so that they can take mask breaks and they can get some fresh air.
Well, I do think that our school staff, our teachers have gone above and beyond in all aspects of their roles. One of the things that sticks out the most is definitely the use of our new technology and implementing all of those resources, particularly our Zoom stations, which I like to refer to as our WALLIs. They really do promote that synchronous learning model, which is, I believe, unique to Berlin High School in the state of Connecticut. And although it does not provide your typical classroom environment that our students and teachers are accustomed to, I do think that it is the closest, thing that we have, and students are benefiting from that, I believe.
I think we're doing a great job with distance learning for the kids. There's a dedicated group of teachers that are doing distance learning, so kids are at home if they're afraid to come to school because of COVID. In the schools, you have teachers and students that are wearing masks. Mr. Kitzman is reminding people to wash their hands, wear their masks, and do all those good things to be safe from COVID.
Well, we're doing a lot. I mean, I think that the most amazing thing about our district is the implementation of the Zoom room cameras. We've provided the opportunity for kids to learn from home, so they can attend their classes from home, and they can interact with teachers from home and other students in the classroom. This provides opportunities for groupings to be formed through breakout rooms on Zoom and the use of this technology. We've also done a lot through our counseling and related services staff to make sure that we're meeting the needs of students that may have anxiety given the current state of the world. And other than that, there's been COVID precautions that we've taken throughout the school in order to ensure social distancing, the wearing of masks, cleaning and sanitization. Our plan is very comprehensive in terms of planning for to make sure that kids have a clean environment to eat and that they're safe and secure.
It is a very different experience because we're using less paper and focusing more on technology in order to facilitate the needs of the students, trying to provide a similar, if not a better experience despite the required changes.
Well, in the past, teachers have directed all of their energy toward teaching their students, but this year, that energy is split between teaching and safety protocols. So the quality of teaching has not changed, but we now have to be mindful of our students' safety. The energy we have, the focus, of the school day, it's different this year. So that's definitely been an adjustment for teachers. What's been difficult for students? I guess just an additional stressor in their life, but they have been great. For the first 7 weeks of school, they've been outstanding. So what's been positive? I can honestly say the students are happy. They're happy to be back in school. They miss their teachers, they miss their classmates, they miss the school experiences. I can see it in my students, I can see it in the students I see in the hallway, I can see it with the students outside at recess time. And they've been really, really good with following those safety protocols. They just follow the routines, quite nicely.
So to meet the needs of the COVID restrictions, like I said, I've been switched from being the library media specialist to being a remote teacher. What that means is I have 18 kids in a remote classroom who are learning from home. They Zoom in with me in the morning, 3 times in the morning, and they Zoom in with me about 2 times in the afternoon. We spend about 4 hours live on Zoom together teaching. So these are kids who are unable to come in due to health restrictions or someone in their house. So Berlin is working really hard to work with families that can't make it into school.
So in terms of how our jobs have changed, I think most people would understand that they've changed quite drastically since wintertime and even fall of last year. I would say some of the positive things that we've seen, first just coming back in person. The obvious thing is just being able to be in person together. It's just really nice to be with the kids, and I think the kids really appreciate it as well. But the other thing is because things have gotten increasingly more difficult for us as teachers, we are having to work extra hard to engage the students who are at home. And we are lucky enough to work in a district where we've been provided with professional development opportunities to learn those technologies and to try them out with our students. The other thing that I'd like to mention about positive, we don't usually have the opportunity to yes, we have all of our students every day. We have students in front of us and students on the computer. But in terms of the students who are in front of us, obviously that number of students is a lot smaller than usual. And to the students' credit, their behavior has been phenomenal. So I think that's another thing that I would really like to point out, because despite how difficult what we are doing now has been, parents have been phenomenal, students have been phenomenal. And I really think as a whole, everyone's just trying their best to make the best of a difficult situation. In terms of some of the negative things, there's a couple sort of obvious ones. So while technology has afforded us the opportunity to teach students while they're in front of us and at home simultaneously, there's obviously some difficulties that come with that as well. So students sometimes have issues logging into Zoom, accessing the different materials. So that's definitely a struggle for us because there's not much we can do about it. One of the other things that we've been noticing is because we have learners who are doing work from home half the time, we've unfortunately seen an increase in plagiarism from students, and that's also difficult for us to control when all we see is what we have on the screen. I think one of the bigger issues is time. Everything is taking more time. So as I already mentioned, we're reaching out to parents more often, and while that's great for both our learners and for our parents and for us, it's a lot more time, and we don't have any time built in our schedule to make those contacts. So we're struggling to sort of keep up with the demands of that. Also, everything that we create now has to be accessible to students who are both in person and students who are at home, which was a huge learning curve. So just as a very sort of low-level example, I teach math, and in my class, oftentimes when students would come in, I would have copies of the answer keys from the previous night's homework, as just from years of experience, that was the quickest and most effective way to do it. For a number of reasons, I can't do that anymore. I worry about sharing those papers from class to class. Additionally, if I were to print out paper copies of the answer key, the students at home can't see it. So now instead of just running my answer key through the photocopy machine, I have to take a picture, create a PDF, and then post it, and it just gets, that's just that's not even how many steps that it normally takes to create, let's just say, one lesson plan for the day. To get Zoom up and running is 5 or 6 steps. To share my screen is 5 or 6 steps. So everything just takes more and more time.
So my job has changed mostly by there is no such thing now as planning time. If I'm not actively teaching, I'm actively cleaning something. In PE, if I'm cleaning between 500 and 600 items a day. If every kid is using a ball, a cone, and something else, then that's 3 things every class that needs to be cleaned for every kid. So all the planning that we usually do for classes and upcoming lessons is done outside of the school day, because during the school day, we're doing 1 or 2 of those things. My job as a coach has changed in that now it's more than it ever has been, is more the social emotional. The kids at the older grades have a harder time dealing with all the changes. The younger kids, they don't know any different. So when a kindergartner comes into the gym, they think this is always what it has been. Where the older kids, especially the seniors, losing things and having things not happen is a little harder for them to kind of manage.
The hardest thing is not being able to create the relationships in the same way that normally we would try. Not having the sports or some of the other things, being able to attend those events, those help to build relationships both inside and outside of the classroom. And so that has made things challenging. We've tried to compensate for that by continuing to have clubs and other activities, but that is a challenge because that helps to build relationships inside the classroom as well.
The difficult is we've been doing YMCA cleaning and disinfecting. This is add to us. And we've been doing buses, AM and BM. We've been doing more than 1 space for lunch, which has been 3 spaces versus 1 last year. and we been doing disinfected every student desk every day, and we have to wash floors, make sure that every place being touched with kids or staff has been disinfected, which we've been doing it 3 times during the day.
Probably the thing that is the most difficult for me personally is that I can no longer give a hug to a child that needs a hug, and I have to try to avoid receiving a hug from a child. Sometimes that's impossible to do. Luckily, I'm up here and the little ones are down there. But that, for me, that's been a tough thing to accept.
I think kids are really resilient. So certainly we're seeing some feelings of being overwhelmed with the masks and the changes and the social distancing, doing school at home. You know, I work with middle school kids, so executive functioning skills aren't quite where we want them to be. They're not adults yet. So managing that on their own is still a challenge, but we're teaching to it. But I think kids overall are happy to be back in school. They're happy to have some sense of normalcy, and we're just supporting them the best we can.
The students have been responding very well. They're accepting of the fact that they do need to wear the masks. They're accepting of going outside and taking a break when needed. They allow the teachers to do their teaching as they have been, and they're riding with it.
First and foremost, the students have been unbelievable in terms of their resilience, especially with masks, being in a school building. Nothing replaces the energy of students being together in the school community, being together live. So in terms of their response, I could guarantee many are, while you certainly could throw in words like anxious and nervous, you could also throw in words like grateful, thankful, appreciative, happy, safe, joyful. We have a very strong commitment at Hubbard, and I know in the district, that teachers walking in this year, relentless commitment to maintaining connections with students and families. And not only doing that under circumstances that mirror past years, but how do you maintain a connection with the kid that's out for 2 weeks, that's quarantining? How do you maintain a connection with the kid that might be remote learning, that has a different teacher in the district, but is still part of Hubbard School? How do you maintain a connection with a kid that may not have the access right off the bat to certain pieces that is really important for them to have? So when there's a focus on that connection, then everyone stays together. There's a power. It's kind of like, almost like a fist. Like when the fingers are all apart, you know, but when they're together, strong. So we try to maintain that strong connection with kids and families, and no one gets lost along the way. It's hard. It's hard because you're talking with parents and families that, based on decisions that we need to make from the state, are, you know, having to find daycare at the drop of a hat, or having to figure out how they're going to take care of their kids and adjust their schedules to make sure that they're learning, you know, like they have been in school. And so when you see and you ask me how kids are adjusting, I think when you see that ahead of time and you say, listen, it doesn't matter what happens, this kid is going to feel connected to us and part of our school community. And again, I'll give the testament first and foremost to the teachers, to the parents, to the people who are right there with them every day. They are the difference makers. You know, with that, I think you can see right now. I mean, here it is. We're close to November 1. We've been in 5 days a week, full time, full tilt. And you go out, and I'm sure if you were to go out and look at our recess, or watch kids arrive or leave, or even in our hallways, the tenor of the building that you'll get from kids is like, we're thrilled to be here. This is great. I get to see my friends. I mean, I know we're in masks, but you throw a group of kids out in a playground somewhere, whether they're in space suits, costumes, or masks, they find a way to connect. They find a way to socialize. And our teachers have become amazing at being creative, given the safety protocols and constraints that they have, saying, how can I socialize with these kids? I have to do it different, but it's going to happen. Let's think about these ideas. There's not this defeatist, we can't do ... It's this driven piece with a teacher in front of kids that says, I need to make this community come together, and what can I do to make that, you know, to make that happen under any and all circumstances? So the kids are doing awesome. I mean, unbelievable. Stars of the show.
no doubt.
I personally would want them to know that the teachers are really working very hard to meet the needs of all the kids. It's a very stressful time for education right now, and that just to know that the teachers are bending over backwards to make it a successful year given all the challenges that they are faced with.
I would say that I think the Berlin School District is working really hard to try to find ways to reach out to these kids and teach them in a new way that it hasn't been done before. So I would say get out there and support your teachers and support the Berlin Board of Education, because we are really trying hard to work for you.
Just emphasizing the fact that, being not from Berlin, I'm just incredibly impressed by the resiliency that this community has shown, and we're continuing to be resilient. And it's, a colleague had mentioned before, we're all of us in this community, all stakeholders are kind of building this plane as we're flying it, but we're doing, I think, a pretty good job with what we have in order to support our students. And it's cliche to say, but the students are our future, and I feel very confident in the population here in Berlin and our community to succeed.